Hello, I'm Maria Hall Brown, and this is LA Currents. Well, seniors are somewhat in the epicenter of risk when it comes to the pandemic, but fortunately there are services to help. I'm delighted to be joined by the Assistant General Manager of the Los Angeles Department on Aging, James Don. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, as I said, seniors are in fact known as being at the epicenter of risk due to the fact that COVID seems to attack seniors at an unusually high rate. But there are ways to help seniors in this particular era, in particular with the Department of Aging. So how has the department had to adjust to the pandemic and being able to provide opportunities and services to seniors?
Actually, in terms of the things that we've been doing to adjust to the situation, the top priority for us was ensuring that seniors continue to get fed in such a terrible situation. Prior to the pandemic, we had already had a senior nutrition program consisting of home-delivered meals for homebound seniors, as well as dining centers located at senior centers and other places throughout the city, giving seniors a chance to socialize with one another, as well as get at least one good hot meal per day. So with the pandemic, what we had to do is change the way we delivered services. So now all of our meals basically are delivered, regardless of whether or not a senior is homebound. And we also switched from providing meals 5 times per week to 7 times. So basically, seniors are getting a meal for each day of the week. And all of our senior centers are closed to the public. However, they're still actually in operation. So the department contracts with nonprofit agencies to provide the actual services to the seniors. So even though the seniors may not be going down to the senior centers, they're actually still there providing services. So right after we stabilized the nutrition end of our services, we were very concerned, especially about seniors who were basically alone in their homes. So all of our case management staff at our service providers started doing telephone reassurance calls. Basically checking up on the seniors, making sure that they were okay. Many of them expressed that they were grateful that somebody was looking in on them. And eventually, each senior's own personal network of family and friends, they started establishing their own needs, but we were basically keeping an eye on those who have fewer resources with friends and neighbors.
Let's get some practical numbers out here. So, in a normal given day prior to this crisis, how many deliveries of meals did you offer, and also then how many in addition to that do you think actually came into senior centers around Los Angeles?
Well, prior to the pandemic, we were serving a combination of both home delivered and at our dining centers, a little bit over 5,000 meals per day, Monday through Friday. Right after the pandemic hit, we went through a short period of you couldn't dine at the senior centers anymore. You would come and pick up your meals, and that lasted for maybe about a week, maybe 2 weeks. And then everyone was encouraged to stay at home, so we switched to a completely home delivered. So we saw a temporary drop as the seniors who were really just going to the senior center so they could be with their friends, not necessarily that they need the meals, but they were quickly replaced by seniors who needed the food and didn't have other resources of getting groceries or hot meals. So right now, that program is serving over 6,000 per day. And then our additional Great Plates program, another 11,600 about. Yeah, so over 17,000 seniors are getting fed each day.
So Great Plates is an emergency program that was actually put into place by Governor Newsom, but it came from federal funds. And I think it's really important to clarify how Great Plates works, because it was definitely not something that we had from a city level control over the rules and regs. So how is Great Plates put into place, and what are its restrictions and regulations?
Okay. As I mentioned, before the pandemic, the department already operated a senior nutrition program.
Right.
And besides the seniors who would go to our senior centers to socialize, have a hot meal during the day, our services are really targeted towards low-income seniors. The Great Plates program from the state, basically we're trying to focus on those seniors who weren't necessarily low income but suddenly found themselves without other options. So the rules for that program is that they had to be at least 60 and older, or if they were between 60 and 64, if they had some sort of medical condition that would put them under the vulnerable population category, as well as not having already being a participant in other federally funded nutrition or food programs.
So if you got Meals on Wheels or you were getting food delivered by the Department of Aging from the
Right.
city, you couldn't qualify for Great Plates.
Right. Basically, the feds didn't want to duplicate what was already occurring
Okay.
and get those services out to basically new groups of seniors that would need help.
Got it.
Yeah. So that's the major difference between the two programs. But at the end of the day, seniors are still getting fed.
But Great Plates also was put into place to assist not just seniors, but to help the economy.
Right. In a way, it's really meant to help local businesses, and out of that, seniors benefited from it. It was fortunate, I think, that they decided that the recipients of these meals from restaurants would be seniors who were the most vulnerable population. So it makes a lot of sense. So the way the program was set up is that the council offices and the mayor's office basically selected the local businesses to support under this program, and we contracted with them to provide the meals, the 11,600 meals to the seniors.
It's a great program in the fact that local restaurants are being supported, delivery services are being supported, and people are getting, 3 meals a day. I know that there has been some concerns that there's this group in the middle that kind of got, that there's no option available for, but at the same time, there are very strict rules on how this money can be used and spent and how these programs are established. So there's really not a lot anybody could do because this is the program the way it's established.
Right, but there's still, as I mentioned before, it's more of a combination of services that we provide. So prior to this, we already had an existing nutrition program that served the low-income seniors and anyone over. There's no means testing.
Got it.
You don't have to be a low-income senior to receive our services. The challenge was that there's so many. There's over, I think we may be up to 600,000 seniors in the city of LA now.
Oh my goodness.
So when this hit, it just greatly expanded the base of our clientele. And we very quickly, under our regular program, reached a structural limit of how many people can we actually serve. I mean, our service providers were basically pulling staff from every other program that they could get their hands on in order to help deliver these meals. And so there's definitely more seniors that could be served than we have the capacity or the funding exists to cover. So we very quickly maxed out. So, but there are people, as you say, that's kind of in between that are able to get services. And I think the challenge going into the future is how will services for seniors adapt over time, because we're still in the middle of this.
Oh, this is unprecedented. I mean, you can't predict, what next week is going to look like.
Right.
And as far as these federal programs are concerned, when do they expire, and do we think that there's going to be an ongoing, extension to these programs? Do we know?
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Actually, within the last 6 months, we've already received, as the Department of Aging through the California Department of Aging, we've already received 2 allotments of federal dollars. The first one was the Family First COVID emergency funds, which we had been using and we're still using to really pay for the additional meals as well as hiring additional drivers. The other is the CARE Act funds. And we're getting a separate allotment from the state, which we'll be using this fiscal year to continue covering meal services.
You partner with a lot of organizations. It's not just carrying the burden by yourself, because obviously that's an impossible task, especially when you, how many seniors did you say we have in Los Angeles?
I think around 600,000.
That's, that's a country in and of itself. So you, I would imagine, rely on, strong partnerships with other nonprofits and private, public cooperatives.
Right. So all of our contractors are basically nonprofit community-based agencies. And that actually gives us an additional advantage in that they're really experts in working with members of their community, with other organizations as well. Being nonprofits, they're very good at finding additional resources. And what we as a department like to do is whenever there are additional grant opportunities, we provide the additional leverage to their applications, basically assuring grantors that we as the city of LA are in full support of this agency's program. And so if there are any pilot programs that they're applying for to help seniors, we would loan them our support, as well as when they actually do the implementation. If there's some synergies between us and the agencies, we would gladly participate.
You brought up the senior center, and a lot of these meals that are provided at the senior center, although definitely a great asset to senior population, but may take a secondary chair to the fact that these senior centers are social opportunities for people who may otherwise be isolated at home. So they're closed now, although they're being utilized for their ability to, be a home base for a lot of things. What are the parameters that you're waiting for, your agency is waiting for, to be able to open those senior centers back up? I mean, can it be kind of like schools, maybe 1 hour a day, and let's do everything outside? Are there, things kind of slowly going into place so they can open again?
We're looking at that very carefully, just because of the vulnerability of the population that we serve. So I think in overall terms, in relations to other organizations or areas where they're doing reopening plans, ours would be a little bit more cautious. We're definitely looking at how the CDC and the county health department are going to issue their guidance in terms of senior centers, just to be sure that we're taking every precaution we can. We definitely want to start thinking, and we have reached out to our partners to start discussions about, well, how do you envision that we're going to reopen to the public? And we share with them whatever guidance we have from the public health department. I know my general manager, Laura Trejo, has been in conversations with the county health department, specifically asking that they review the guidance necessary so that we can safely open our senior centers.
And how many do we have in the city?
I believe we have over 34. And actually, this would be a good opportunity for me to just kind of explain. As a Department of Aging and our partner agencies, many of them actually operate their programs at senior centers that are owned or under the Department of Recreation and Parks.
Oh, that makes sense.
So basically, Rec and Parks, they own the land, they own the buildings, and then in certain locations where we have our senior centers, the agencies are delivering services within the building to the community. And basically, we as the Department of Aging, we're funding those programs as well as providing guidance.
Well, then that leads me to my next question. What are some of the attributes of the Department of Aging? Obviously, we've discussed meals, we've talked about senior centers, but that's just, a fraction of what the Department of Agency actually touches when it comes to the life of the seniors in Los Angeles. So what are some of the other things that the department does?
Well, one of the things that we do is we do advocate on the behalf of seniors. We have a council on aging, and they're basically composed of members of the senior community as well as representatives of organizations that provide senior services. And we actually have a requirement that all of our contracted service providers have very similar setups of an advisory committee consisting of representatives from the community that they serve to ensure that the voices of seniors are taken into account. We also provide some direct services. Even though we do contract out a lot, we actually provide services ourselves. We've had a job training program for seniors, actually older adults from 55 and older.
Wow, really?
And actually, it's older adult workers are actually extremely good workers. They're a little bit more mature. They understand what's actually needed in a job place. And what we've found in the past decade, really, is that as the economy was changing, a lot of businesses were starting to recognize that customers, especially for instance in hospitality industry, they really feel more comfortable when they see an older worker because they feel like this person is more experienced. They know what's going on, and if I have a question, they'll be able to answer it. They know how to help me. So that was also an advantage. But recently, because of the homelessness issue, we were involved in that we started noticing a number of seniors who were, if they were still working, because of the situation that they were in, if their health would take a downturn, it would jeopardize their employment, which in turn would jeopardize their housing. So under our job training director, Mariella, she proposed that we create a separate program specifically targeting homeless seniors or seniors who are at risk in order to provide them with job training opportunity and resources to search for jobs. And we were given a small pilot program, enough to fund about 30 seniors, but for those 30 seniors, it really made a lot of difference. And even now, with the current economic climate, some of them have still been able to find jobs. I mean, we're very happy for them and very impressed. And I think that it's really important to provide a senior the opportunity for their own sense of self-esteem by being able to work, not just being in a program where they can receive a subsidy of some sort, but the fact that they're earning a living makes a big difference as well.
What you were saying is so fascinating to me because I would imagine that there's probably also an opportunity here during the pandemic to offer some sort of training, not necessarily for income or employment, but just for the ability to use tech so that they could stay in contact with friends and family, so that there is that opportunity to telecommunicate the way all of us are doing right now, via all of the great opportunities we have with FaceTime and Zoom and meetups and everything like that. Have you found that there is a kind of an outcry to have that sort of information?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, one of the things we have started shifting over is to provide virtual workshops, virtual presentations. We do have social workers within our own department as well as out at our contract service providers. So we do provide requested workshops on family caregiving issues, how to handle stress, financial issues for family caregivers as well. We are also, one of the programs that we've had in our service centers for the past 10, 15 years has been a wellness program. And this is different from your normal activities that you picture at a senior center like bingo or whatever. These programs were actually...
Zumba.
Yeah, to some, but actually there are some exercise programs that are very, well, all of them are helpful, but our evidence-based programs are based on research from universities where they've basically stated, okay, if you follow this process, you will be guaranteed a actual result, something that could be medically measured as improving the health of the seniors. For me, since I really deal more with the budget issues of the program, it was a game changer because in the past when I would lobby for funding for great senior programs,
You have to have proof that it works.
right. Before it was, yeah, this is the right thing to do for seniors. And then there were all these discussions over the years about what's the return on investment, you know? And suddenly I was able to say, hey, all these programs actually help seniors and is measurable. So we have programs that deal with managing chronic diseases, improving the health of sedentary seniors. And that was actually one of our first wellness programs that we implemented, and it had such wonderful results. We had one senior who, prior to the program, the best she could do was get to the door, and that was about it. By the time, and her goal in the program was to be able to get to the front yard where the mailbox is to get her mail each day. By the time she was done, she was so happy. She was walking around the neighborhood and she was demanding, okay, I finished your course. What's next? You know, what are you going to do for me now? That was a great story that was very motivational for us to establish a lot of our other programs. And like a lot of programs that we established, we have them at each one of our 15 service areas. Basically, we have one large multi-purpose center that acts as a focal point. And we try to design our program so that it's a one-stop shop. You go to the one place and either they can provide you the service or they can give referrals for you so that they can hook you up to get the services that you're looking for, that you need. One of the other services that we provide actually is assistive transportation.
That was something I was going to ask you about because you know, that is a critical component to anything, whether it's getting food or supplies or medical or doctor's appointments or just anything. So transportation.
Yes, so we've operated a assistive transportation program under the umbrella of the Department of Transportation Citywide program for over 20 years, about 23. And basically, we have the county's access transportation services, which is what we call a curb-to-curb service. Basically, a senior would call and they would wait at the sidewalk for the van to arrive, pick them up, and take them to their destination. Our program was a door-to-door service for frail seniors who need someone to escort them. So the best example that I always use is a senior who has dialysis treatments. Usually by the time they're done, you know, their balance might be a little off right after the treatment, and it's very valuable to have the escort there to help them from the door of the clinic into the van, and then from the van into the door of their home to make sure that they don't fall.
Has that changed? Has all of these has this particular component to the program changed since the pandemic? Have different protocols been put into place?
Actually, right after the pandemic hit, we suspended that service because we wanted to be able to ensure the safety of the clients as well as the drivers and the escorts. We have since resumed that service, and we're following all the protocols of making sure the vans are cleaned before the start of the day as well as in between the rides of the clients. We're also limiting the passengers basically to just one instead of 2 or 3. So those are some of the adjustments that we've made. And actually it's interesting as more general challenge is that a lot of the staff at our senior centers, they use a lot of volunteers, and many of them are retirees or older adults. And it was a really big challenge for them because a lot of those same volunteers had to stay at home as well. So they had to scramble to find replacement volunteers. And that's where I have often thanked publicly my fellow city employees. The city has a disaster service worker program, and basically any city employee who's not in a critical role to maintain city operations are available for other departments who need the assistance. And we basically put in the request on behalf of our service providers for additional delivery drivers, as well as people to handle our phone bank when we're enrolling all those thousands of seniors in the Great Plates program. And that really made a big difference. We also had volunteer drivers from Access Services as well, who have been of a great help to us.
Are you looking for volunteers? Because given what you just said, you've lost a lot of your peer group volunteers. You have been able to access, government workers and volunteers, but it still sounds to me like there's not enough people. Are you looking for people that could help
Sure.
in some way, capacity?
We're always looking for people. Yes, if anybody's interested, they could either contact their local senior centers or call our department. They could just dial 311 and they'll get to our department, and we could refer them to the agency that serves their neighborhood. They're always in need of additional drivers. As a matter of fact, one of the challenges that we have is now that we're providing so many meals per day, one of the things we had to do was instead of delivering one meal per day, we basically boxed them up into like 5 meals so that we can reduce the number of times we actually had to make a delivery to each senior. However, because we have so many seniors, they're still quite busy every day. And then whenever there's a shortage in staff, having additional volunteers would be extremely helpful. So for instance, if someone at the agency was tested positive, or they might have been exposed, basically they all get pulled out until they're assured that they're tested negative before they're allowed back in.
Of course.
But then that creates a staffing shortfall for that day or for that week, depending on what the situation is. So yes, they're always in need of volunteer drivers.
Unrelated to the agency, but just because you're an expert in your field, we don't have a lot of time left, but just in general, if you are, I know you rely on the awareness of neighbors, especially when it comes to some dramatic experiences with elderly, but how about just in general? What are some pieces of advice you would offer for people who know perhaps there's a senior on the street that's living by themselves, or perhaps, people want to be able to help, but maybe not officially, or just want to be cognitive and aware? What are some of the things that you suggest that for the population in general should be aware of with seniors and how they can help?
My first response is that wearing a mask, practicing social distancing, washing your hands, that's the first thing that everybody should do, and that will benefit all seniors as a vulnerable population. In terms of seniors in your neighborhood, as you mentioned, just keeping an eye on them, especially if you observe any changes that might cause you some concern. You can always call the department to report it. As a matter of fact, the department has what we call a SOS program with Water and Power and the Housing Department, where if their field employees notice that something is different about their senior customer, they could report their concern to us, and we will have a social worker either at our agency reach out, or based on the information, if it sounds very serious,
we wellness check?
Yeah, we would contact Adult Protective Services over at the county, and they would conduct a wellness check on the seniors just to make sure everything is okay. As I mentioned earlier, if they wish to volunteer, that will be wonderful.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for all of it. And we have to reestablish what the actual line is to be a senior. I think, wise adults and something along those lines, perhaps.
Yeah, I often get asked, so what age is it when you're a senior? And I always respond, it depends on which federal program you ask.
There you go. And that's a wrap on this very wise edition of LA Currents.